Gratitude is everything.
Absolutely.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Or grateful.
I know why you're pushing me out the way. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Hi, once again, welcome on back to our channel.
I'm Susie.
And I'm Ness, and this is
Mom and Daughter Talk,
where we hope to inspire, encourage, and uplift your mother-daughter relationships. As you saw by the title of this here webisode, it is called The Road Isn't Always Easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to expound on kind of the things that we've gone through in life. So I guess you could say this is more of like a story time and kind of hear what we've been through in certain seasons of our lives.
Okay. So since this is a show about mothers and daughters, I think I will start with the fact that I didn't want any kids. So really, she might not even had any kind of road to talk about. When I was dating her dad, who became my husband, one of the things that we talked about was obviously having kids. I didn't want kids, and he didn't want kids either. So we were like,
didn't want no kids?
no. So we were like, I was like, you might be the one for me, because it's hard to find, anyone that doesn't want kids.
How old were y'all?
20s, in our 20s.
20 what?
25, 23.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so then we were married for like 2.5 years, and then I became pregnant. And I was like, I always say, you know what? I had a plan, and then God had a plan. Your dad and I ran to Ralph's or something because it was open 24 hours. I took the test, put it in the restroom, and then you have to wait for like 10, 15 minutes. Back then you did. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. So we're sitting there like, oh gosh, I'm pregnant. So then when the time was up, we were both like, go ahead, you look. No, you look. Go ahead, you look. So we walked into the bathroom together like, I don't know, like there was a monster in there. And then when he saw it first and he said, oh my God, I knew I was pregnant. And honestly, it probably took me a good 3 months to wrap it around my brain that I am going to have a child. And really, I think God gives us 9 months, not just for the child to grow, but for the mother to get into her brain that my life is going to change completely. But then in that process, I had to really see that it wasn't about me, that I was the carrier, right? Or the courier. You're delivering something, or someone in this case, but really I'm not the sender of that package, if you will, right? So I remember thinking, okay, God has a call on her life. God is going to use me as a vessel to deliver her who has a calling, and the Lord knows her from before she was even in my womb. But when she gets here, oh my gosh, you realize how much you can love somebody. And really, I just want to encourage any of those that out there that have had unforeseen pregnancies. It really is where it's not about you, first of all. And then secondly, it really is where you feel like, because I thought I don't have that maternal thing, right? But it's there. It's just innate. When that child comes, there's something that draws out of you that you become protective. Your attention goes to the protection and survival of this child. So don't worry. With God's grace and strength, He'll bring you through.
Amen. So after all that happened, then I'm on this earth and everything. Growing up, doing my little thing. Realizing that I'm supposed to be here for a reason. Thank you, Mother. I remember since I was a little girl, I was like 8. That's when I remember my parents, they were both entrepreneurs and started their own business. And it was an after-school educational program called Acquire Educational Services. Growing up, I saw they built the building from the ground up. And so I remember running through the halls while they were building and constructing it. And, there were like walls knocked down and no paint, no nothing. And there was a big old warehouse in the back, and I would go and just yell in it and have an echo. And I remember my dad being right there and everything. And so growing up, seeing all that, and I remember walking in his office one day, and he was at his desk, like, writing checks. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I got to pay the people. And I'm like, oh. And then, like, they employed a lot of my cousins. My cousins are a lot older than me. So he was, like, writing checks for the family. And I saw how, wow, this business that you guys started is now being able to provide and be an opportunity for my cousins to come and work here and have a job. And it was just so amazing just seeing like them being bosses. And my mom's real decorative, so she painted like all the walls and decorated the bathroom and everything. And so it was just such an amazing sight to see as a young kid. And I know that's what kind of instilled in me at a young age. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
More is definitely caught than taught.
Yeah. All of that kind of breeded that in me. But then what happened in 08?
Okay, so her dad and I were, like she said, we had an educational services business. We used to contract with different school districts for after school programs, but we also were doing real estate investment. And so those of you that know, the real estate market was booming, right? And so we owned, gosh, about like 10 properties across the US. Things were going well. We had tenants, you know, this and the other. And then when 08, 09 hit, it was the big old kaboom, the crash as far as the real estate market. And so we lost everything. Do you understand? From the building that she talked about was 21,000 square foot building to all the houses, including the one we were living in. And it just felt like our world fell apart. But even in the midst of that, I remember feeling God's peace. And really, at one time I was praying and I had this vision of us being in his hand and us falling, but he let us down gently because we were still in his hand. The fall, he was the break to the fall, if you will. So we lost everything, ended up living with our grandparents, and it was, we thought it was going to be about 6 months, ended up being about 3.5, 4 years, okay? And through that time, oh my gosh, I can just say as a mother, it was very trying, because I think it's more simple if it's just two adults. You know what I mean? A married couple, and you just have to pick up and just fight. But you're adults. You have all the tools to be able to do so. When you have children to protect and to feed and different things, a whole nother dynamic. I remember there were some low points that I'll never forget. The thing that kept me was my relationship with the Lord, but knowing that this is temporary. That no storm ever lasts forever. Ecologically, it can't last forever, right? So it really is where I held on to that.
Yeah, and I want to just let them know how old your children were. So I have a little sister. So I was 15, my little sister was 7, and we went from having our own rooms and living, you know, in a nice square foot house to moving in with my grandparents. So now it's not 4 people, it's 6 people, and I had to share a room with my sister. And I mean, she was 7 at the time. I was in high school. Like, even the smallest little things that she would do would irritate me for some reason. I'm like, I can't say get out of my room because it's our room. And so that in itself was just a whole whirlwind for y'all who share rooms with siblings. And yeah, for me, when that had happened to us all, obviously as a kid, I really had no idea. Like, I had no idea until it was like, okay, we're moving. I'm like, oh, okay, where we going? We're moving in with Grandma and Papa. And they're my grandparents, so I'm like, okay. Like, okay. But you guys said it would be for 3 months.
This is bliss. No, just kidding.
No, for real. And you guys said that we would be there for 3 months. So I'm like, oh, this will be fun. And,
wow.
But I distinctly remember it was when, because I was playing club volleyball pretty much since the 8th grade. Yeah, 8th grade. So club was like $3,000. So $3,000 a year. And I remember you sat me down and you were like, oh, you didn't even sit me down. I think you were passing me in the hallway.
I did? What'd I say?
Yeah, because at the time I was playing volleyball as a sophomore in high school. And I remember I was like, oh, can't wait for club season. Like, I think I said, can I get new gear? And then you were like, oh, no, sweetie, we can't get that right now. And I'm like, well, why? Like, when can we get it? And you know, you're just like, oh, no, we can't. And then I was mad at that. And then I think that was an opening for you to be like, so about this year's club season, we can't do it. And I was like, what do you mean? I was just like so caught off guard. Yeah. But I was crushed and I was like, why can't I play? And so I'm sure as a mom, that was hard for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing, when you feel like you can't do for your children like you used to, is very difficult. Very difficult. And I don't think you can really know that unless you are a parent, you know, and whether it be mother or father, and know that you can't do for your children is difficult.
Do you remember that conversation?
No, actually, no, but that sounds like something I would say, sweetie, I don't think we can do it this year.
When things happen in life and situations happen, tragic things even, like, I think a good key we always have to remember, like, it affects me differently and it affects you differently.
Absolutely.
And there's, as we can see, as evidence, there's things that I remember distinctively that you don't, and vice versa. But as a kid back then, that's what I remember. Like, I can't play club volleyball. Like, what do you mean? And I remember I was a little mad. Yeah, I was a little mad. But obviously I got over it.
Yeah. I think one of the, I won't say lowest times, but things that I remember is I would drop off my daughters at school, and it would be 3-4 cities over, right? Not that far, but in order to save on gas, right? Because they had the Beamer at the time, and it was the SUV, so it guzzled a lot of gas. So I would take them to school, and I would have to hang out for like 6 hours before they got out, because I didn't want to go back and then come back, and there was only a certain amount of gas allotted for the week. So I would find things to do. I'd go walk and, exercise or do different things. But I just remember thinking, I have to find things to do just so that we can have enough gas. And really, again, as a parent, you know that you want to protect your children. And so yeah, when they would ask me, oh, what are you doing? Or this, that, I was just like, I made it like that's what I wanted to do. But no, that's not what I wanted to do, but it's what I had to do to save on gas.
I had no idea she was doing that. I do remember, as far as gas, we couldn't go to church anymore.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in the church and we would go every Sunday. So I remember going to church once, and then after that I was like, are we going? And then yeah, you guys were like, no, can't go. And I'm like, oh. Well, I was a little happy because I was like, oh, I don't have to get up on Sunday morning. And it was also critical, I'll just throw this in there, growing up in church. Like, everyone's background is different, but for me, growing up in church, that was just like something instilled in me at a young age. So when we didn't go to church, even though as a kid I did not want to get up early Sunday morning, I did not want to get dressed up or whatever, I just wanted to chill, especially because I was in sports. Like, I'm tired, I'm beat. I might have like a tournament all day Saturday and gotta go to church on Sunday. But still, it's like, once that's gone, in a sense, like, for me as a kid, it felt like you miss it, and you kind of, I don't know, subconsciously there's something in me that was always like, well, this is the norm. Like, so as I got older, it's like, I'm gonna seek out a church when I'm ready. Okay, real estate market crash, we lost everything, and then initially thought it was gonna be 3 months. What was going on for you when it was a time frame of 3 months all the way up until 3 years? Like, what transpired?
Gosh. Again, my priority was getting them to school and making sure that my girls were okay. Getting odds and end jobs. I remember I used to babysit for my friend because she worked at night. Remember Tamara? Yeah, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she works in children's services. So I remember babysitting her son. So I would make a little money like that. Then I ended up becoming a personal assistant for a friend of mine. She's in the entertainment industry. So did that, travel sometimes, would schedule different interviews and things for her. So yeah, I did like odds and end jobs. And then I remember distinctly praying and asking God, like, I need some direction, because what I was doing was not my passion. And I really believe in anything you do in life, you got to have a passion for it. Turn your passion into service and the money will come. I heard that quote years ago, and I really abide by that, because sometimes people go from passion to monetizing. No, don't skip the service part. Don't skip the service part. And if you're selling a product, don't skip the quality of product. That middle part, don't just monetize. Because that will come as a residual if you serve people well. Yeah, I prayed and didn't get an answer, but I remember 2 days later, I got up and I just heard distinctly, I don't think it wasn't an audible voice, but in my spirit, I heard, teach hair. And I was like, teach hair? And so I started seeking out as far as being a cosmetology instructor. I had a background in cosmetology. I had my own salon and different things before I collaborated with my ex-husband to do the educational services business. So yeah, I went back back into the industry, the beauty industry, and started teaching hair. And it's amazing because what you think is just one-dimensional, where you think, okay, this is a new job or whatever, but God used it to help me overcome the fear of talking in front of people. That was such a fear for me. I remember distinctly in high school doing an oral report and being the third one up, and when the other two were doing their part, just sweating bullets and just being so nervous. But when I got this job, I knew that I wanted to teach, but I had to get in front of people. In the first class that I was over, oh my gosh, 50 students.
Oh my gosh.
50 students. But eventually it got easier and easier, and God used it to help me overcome. And I'm so glad that I overcame that, because I think, it's another avenue where your voice is important. And if the Lord is calling you to, and impressing upon you to share it with not just one-on-one or one person, but more than one, you should feel comfortable and articulate enough to do so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. It's like the things that you go through are your training ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even, obviously, you have no idea that this is your training ground while you're going through it. But that is definitely something that I've learned in my life too.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll make that a different webisode, talking about things that God kind of used in our life to propel us and push us. And it's like, hey, this is your training ground,
right,
for things that have come to pass in our life.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's important that as you go through that training ground, to not murmur and complain, because
heart posture.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you may not see the whole picture, but he really is doing something. And the key is to be faithful. Whatever you have, the Bible says, whatever you have to do right now, be faithful in it. So, okay, if you don't like you're looking to buy a house, not quite liking where you live as far as your apartment or whatever, but guess what? Don't trash it. Don't be a good steward. Be faithful over it. Make it pretty. Make it, make it home.
And gratitude is everything.
Absolutely.
Gratitude. Or grateful.
I know why you're pushing me out the way. I'm like,
okay, I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
She pushed me out the frame, but I'm back.
All right. And I think what I learned through that too, and maybe I didn't know it in the process, but I learned that I'm stronger than I thought too. And really a lot of it is how you see yourself. And so, yeah. And then I was able to, it gave us pause, because we were so busy dealing with the business and, managing properties and what have you, that it gave me a pause. Gave me a pause to reflect on things that, what's priority? What's most needful to do right now? What's important? When it comes down to it, houses, anything you can see is temporary. You can have it and you can lose it, just like we did, right? But when you talk about your relationship with God, you can't touch it, but it's priceless, and it's invaluable.
Let's hit on once we got out. So we were in the valleys of the shadow of death, but yet we fear no evil,
because he is with us. His rod and the staff comfort us.
So we finally moved out of Grandma and Papa's. I remember, because I was about to go to college 2 months later. And I will say that once I was in college, it was kind of like my escape. I feel like everyone goes into college, obviously, with their own backgrounds, with their parents, their siblings, and their lives. Like, in college, it's like you get people from everywhere. You get people from out of state. And I went to college in California, in the Bay Area. And I'm from like the LA area. And it's still California, but it's like, California's so huge. It's like 2 different states. Like, that's literally what it feels like. The culture is different. The people are different. The slang is different. So going to college, that was just such a culture shock for me. So I'm gonna be real with it. I grew up in a very diverse area, diverse
ethnicities.
Yeah, ethnicities, nationalities. And this was just a predominantly white school. And I had culture shock, like nobody's business. I didn't even know that was a thing. I had culture shock, and I was homesick for like 2 months. But I distinctly remember coming back from college every break. So you get like 4 breaks in a whole year. And I remember coming back, and it was just something new was always changing in the family dynamics. If I can recall correctly, the first time I came back for Thanksgiving break, and I distinctly remember I had to take my sister outside because like you and Dad were fighting, and I had never, ever seen that before. And So I took her outside and she thought we was just going for a walk and everything. And so I was like, let's just be outside for like 30, 40 minutes, you know? And so that was like the first time though I had come back. And every time I came back from the break after college, looking back on it, like, you know, a shift was happening. And that was when my parents had separated and they told me. But up until they told me, I mean, I had no idea. Like, you know, parents fuss and fight, but I never thought that that would ever happen. After that, it just was break after break. Sometimes I didn't want to go back home for break, but I definitely didn't want to stay up at my college for break either. So I was like, dang, I only got two choices. And I was like, all right.
Yeah. And I know it must have been hard because the times that you're speaking of were very challenging and dark times as far as in our marriage. And so therefore, we know as adults that it should be about the kids, but when you're hurting and when you're, you know, going through what you're going through, sometimes it's difficult because you almost feel like you have nothing else to give. And so I know that, you know, our kids paid for it. I always say, like Dr. Phil says, actually, you know, we get the divorce, but the kids pick up the tab. And I really feel like that. So that's another thing. We can talk about parenting out of guilt, because I know for sure that after that happened, because, you know, you never, especially as a Christian, get married to think that you're going to get divorced, right? So when it did happen, I remember I just wanted to get things for them, especially my younger one that was still living with me. Just wanted to buy her things that I couldn't before, because at that point I was getting on my feet as far as financially. A lot of times I was doing it out of guilt, parenting out of guilt. And then I realized that's not good for either one of us, for me or my child. I think that for those first 2 years, I was a functioning depressant. And by that, because you have responsibilities and things like that, you just function, you do, you know, but it's kind of like existing but not living. So it felt kind of like that. And so my focus was to make sure, just shelter-wise and different things, that, you know, that was there. But at the same time, I think focusing on that, it probably, I know it did, had a cost on the personal relationship between my daughters and I for a season, because I was hurting.
And see, I was about college, so I never felt like you parented out of guilt because I was rarely ever home.
Yeah, you were in a different phase of your life, you know.
Yeah.
The transition of becoming independent.
And that was actually a blessing in disguise when I look back on it. And I'm sure for a lot of people too. If you go off to college, I mean, you more likely than not experience the family drama when you come back, because even if it's like struggling for your own independence, like you're like, I'm in college, I'm growing up, I'm, you know, doing this and that, and your parents aren't there to see your accolades. They aren't there to see your growth. They aren't there for a lot of things, a lot of firsts, I'm sure, that happened in college as well. It's like coming back every break, dealing with the family drama, then also trying to fight for your independence. And I remember with you, I would try to convince you as to why I'm more grown now and why I can go out and you don't have to give me a curfew because now I'm grown. Like I've been doing this. And just that feeling of such freedom. Woo, man. That feeling of freedom, you think you can do whatever, and then you come home and then it's like, you still live under my roof. You can't go do this, and you want my car, or you gonna have to come back at this time. And it's like, okay. Yeah. And so it's like you're still free, but you kind of now you gotta reel it back in. So just even, I don't know, as a child, as a student, like that dynamic of coming back every break, at least for me in my experience, it was rough too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I get it. Anything in transition can be rough. Yeah, absolutely. The beginning, you're all excited. When you see the finish line of something, let's say in a marathon, you're excited. But that in between, that's when the challenge is.
Yeah. 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 So that was pretty much the beginning phases, I would say, of how the road isn't always easy, but I feel like there's still more from at least the stage where I was in college and about to graduate up until today. So I think we'll be making a part 2 about this. Okay. We hope that this encourages you to know that there are ups and downs in life, no matter who you are. If you have breath in your lungs and you are breathing on this earth, you are going to go through some trials and tribulations, okay? But who do you turn to when these things happen in life? Because they're going to happen.
Thank you, and have an amazing day.
Look, I put the thing in my ear.
In your...
Where'd you go?